Hi, I'm Doug from Dynamic Computing and welcome to episode 128 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. This week we're going to talk about the neat DigiView Gold slow scan digitizer. This is a cool thing, and I'd say most of you probably at least heard of what it is. The original DigiView came out in 1986, not horribly long after the Amiga 1000 shipped, and it was designed to work in the Amiga 1000, so it had the reversed parallel port. It supported 4096 color scanning, so that's internally what it would see, and then also 4-bit black and white scanning. Now, after 1988, after the Amiga 500 and 2000 came out, Newtek, the company that made it, upgraded it to the DigiView Gold, which is the one I have right here. Now, this internally supported 21-bit color scanning, which is millions of colors, and 7-bit black and white scanning. So the images tended to even be higher quality because it captured more colors and was able to render them down to the Amiga's 12-bit ham6 mode. Now, this particular DigiView that I'm using was a very, very kind gift from my good friends Jack and Taylor Kalk of Pintz and Amiga. Now, if you don't know Pintz and Amiga, you need to get to know these guys. Check out their Twitch channel. I've got it listed below, and I'll also have it in the description. They do a weekly show showcasing Amiga games where they play against each other. They often have special guests over, and they'll play games against each other, and they will drink lots and lots and lots of beer. And it is a great show, and these guys are just salt of the earth guys. So what they sent me was a DigiView Gold in a nice box set right here. And they also sent a PAL version of DigiView Media Station. Now this includes DigiView Gold, it includes DigiPaint, which is fantastic, and it also has Elan Performer, which is kind of a presentation software package for presenting graphics. Now we'll go into depth about this in another episode, but thanks guys, I really appreciate it. Now, unlike some of the other products I've shown you in the past, like my DC TV, which I'm going to do a new episode on soon, and my VLab capture card, the DigiView is a slow scan digitizer, which means it takes a few minutes to scan the image in, and it has to separate the colors out. All DigiViews come with a color wheel. So you've got your red cellophane, you've got your green cellophane, and you've got your blue cellophane here. And this goes in front of the camera that I'm going to show you in a minute. When you scan the image, you first scan one with a red cellophane and it filters out the red color, then the green, then the blue. Then it takes those three images and it combines them together and magically makes an incredible color image. Pretty clever. Now, you may think this is pretty archaic, considering, we can take a digital camera and snap an image and boom, you've got a billion colors right there. But remember, this was 1986. There were no digital cameras for home use. There just weren't. And this was an incredible way to get quality images into your computer for less than $200. Just unheard of. Yeah, you could buy a color scanner. That's $4,000. Let's go. You could buy other types of digitizers for high-end machines that were incredibly expensive and probably didn't do near the quality what DigiView could do. So let's dig into some digitizing. Now, understand there are some caveats to using DigiView with a modern Amiga. The biggest one really that I found is that the DigiView software, which you see right here running the demo, just does not seem to work properly on Workbench 3.1 and above. It might work on 2.0, but I'm not sure. I actually don't have a 2.0 machine. The screens just don't open up correctly and the scanning just doesn't work. So I'm going to be showing it off on my Amiga 500 running Amiga OS 1.3. Now the cool thing is I've got an ACA 500 Plus in my little Amiga 500 down here, so I can tell it to load whatever version of Kickstart I want, and then I just put in a different CF card. So I've got one CF card that has has Amiga OS 1.3 on it, and another CF card that has 3.2.1. I can pop them in, tell the ACA 500 Plus which one to boot, I'm done. And here you have Amiga OS 1.3 in all of its blue and orange glory. So let's take a closer look at what we can do with the DigiView software, and then we'll take a look at the hardware required to work with it. So we're going to launch DigiView 4.0. You can see it's a very, very, very sparse interface. There's like literally nothing here. But you can go into the screen size menu and you can choose what screen size you want to digitize to. Like we could go high res, interlaced. We can turn on overscan 768 by 480. What we're going to do right now is we're going to keep high res off, but we're going to keep the interlace and the overscan on. So now this will open up a nice interlace screen. Now in low res mode, we're going to go into the control menu. We can scan line art. We can scan in black and white, which is 16 shades of gray. We can scan in 16 colors. We can scan in extra half bright mode, 4096 colors, 4096 plus, which is an enhanced ham mode that virtually eliminates fringing. And then we can scan in dynamic mode, which is absolutely incredible, which we'll talk about in a second. In a nutshell, you'll probably want to scan most things in 4096 plus. That's scanning them in at 21 bits per pixel, so it keeps better track of your colors and such. You can also adjust the brightness, contrast, saturation, red, green, blue, sharpness, and noise reduction on this screen right here. Now, dynamic ham is something really, really unique. This is an amazing feature. What this does, this allows you to literally scan in and display high resolution images. So we go to 640 by 480 or by 400. It will allow you to display 4096 color images in high res mode. Absolutely. Now, it's not quite ham mode. What it does is that it keeps track of each individual scan line as it's created on the Amiga, and it will display 16 colors on each scan line and change that palette on every single scan line. Let me bring one up here for you. So what we're going to show you here is one of the scans I did in dynamic ham mode. Now this just happens to be a 368 by 480 dynamic ham image, but it is actually changing the color palette on each scan line to bring out even more color from this little flower. Now let's compare this with a standard 4096 plus color file from DigiView. We're going to bring it up, and now we will load the non-dynamic version. There we go. And it's hard to see sometimes, but this actually has less of a color purity, and it's got more gradation on it. Here's another good example of dynamic ham in action. Let's take a look at this image. So this is a close-up of my blushing bride, and you'll see on her cheek here, you're going to see the gradations of the regular ham mode, the 4096 plus color ham mode. Now it's still a really cool image. I really like this one. But look what happens when we do this in dynamic ham mode. Okay, look at her cheek again. The gradations are better than they were before. They are definitely a higher quality. And you're going to see a little bit more subtlety in some of the image on here. So yeah, it makes a difference. Now these dynamic ham modes take full control over the system, since they are changing the color palette on every single scan line. Your Amiga is not multitasking anymore. It's using every bit of its processing power, mainly using the copper that's built into the Agnes chip to generate these images. Now that means that if you're looking at these images in DigiView itself, what you're going to see is if you move the mouse or touch the keyboard, the whole image gets distorted because it has to take over and move the mouse around the screen, and it can't keep the display updated at the same time. It's just amazing that the old 7 megahertz 68,000 CPU can actually do this though, and actually pull off a beautiful image like this in dynamic ham mode. Now the traditional DigiView is going to use a copy stand in order to put the camera on the copy stand, have a couple of lights there. You'll see a picture of it right here. Right there. My copy stand I used to have, I can't seem to find it. I know that the lights broke off of it, 20 years ago. I may have just thrown the whole thing away. So I've got my system set up in a tripod. Let's take a look at it. Now the traditional camera that we would use for a DigiView are these Panasonic CCTV cameras. Newtek actually says in their documentation that they tested like a dozen different cameras, and this one had 525 lines of resolution and was able to focus up very close. So this works really well. It can focus from infinity on down to just literally like inches away, because on the back there is a manual focus screwdriver here. You can just take a little screwdriver and adjust that and really focus in close on this little guy. Now here we see the color wheel. You've got your red, your green, and your blue color wheel right here that you turn manually. Now the most critical thing about using a DigiView is having good light. Now I originally just tried to use this little light right here, and it just was not enough. Everything came out washed out. But I find if I use a combination of my studio light, which is blinding you right there, and this little guy, and then put the images right down here on my Atari 7800, it will focus in on them perfectly and scan them in beautifully. Let's give it a shot. Now the camera uses a standard composite cable. You've got a little BNC to composite adapter you use here. But the first thing you want to do is plug the camera video source into a monitor, like this lovely 1702 monitor right here. This is so you can actually focus in on what you want to take a picture of, because the DigiView does not have a live view. Let's grab a picture. So you always want to grab a picture, fairly decent quality, with decent amount of color on it, with incredibly handsome subject matter. So here's one of me and my late father, rest in peace Papa, happy Father's Day, that we're going to capture on here. So what we want to do is we want to position it so we see it on the 1702 monitor. We don't want too many reflections on there. And yeah, that's probably pretty good right there. Now we're going to unplug the composite from the monitor, and we're going to plug the composite right into the DigiView Gold. Let's do that, and we will start scanning. Okay, so here we're back in our DigiView screen. We're at 368 by 480 resolution. We're at 4096 plus, and we're going to start scanning. First thing we do is we scan in the red filter, and so I'm manually turning the filter so the red filter is now covering the lens, and we're going to say digitize red. It's going to pull that in, and you'll see this is why it is called a slow scan digitizer, because it's pulling it in just a little bit at a time, but you see it builds the image. There's my pop right there. It builds the image as we go along, and then it's going to clean it up a little bit, and we will have scanned in the red image. Now I manually turned the wheel to green on the camera. I'm going to scan in the green image. Don't worry, it keeps that red one back there too. And we'll let this scan in. And lastly, we go up here and we scan in the blue. I've already turned the filter wheel. We'll let her scan in. Now we have the entire red, green, and blue image scanned in. We now want to render the image in full color. We go over to Controls and Display, and it is going to generate a beautiful 4096 color image. Well, an okay 4096 color image. Not the best. It looks like the camera shifted a little bit on one of the colors. If you take a look here, you can see that like on my arm, we've got a little bit of a color shift right there. And then, yeah. So the camera was not perfectly steady. Maybe I bumped it when we were scanning it in. But let's take a look at one of the other scans that I did here. There we go. You can see this one that I scanned a little bit earlier as a test. Yeah, the coloring is more even, and the quality is a little bit better. So yeah, we must just bump the camera on there, which means you have to be really careful when you're scanning in these images. But the quality is okay. I mean, it's really okay. Now, to be perfectly honest, I also took an image that was a scan done on my big Epson scanner on my computer, and I saved that as a JPEG file, manually brought it into this exact Amiga, and then I used image effects to convert from a JPEG to a 368 by 480 IFF, and we'll take a look at that one. And you can see a dramatic improvement in the quality. So compare this one where I converted a JPEG image that I scanned in elsewhere with the DigiView scan. We'll bring up the DigiView scan again. It's night and day. This is perfectly fine for 1986 or 1988, but you know, you'll have to admit that the JPEG image certainly came in better. Look at that. Look at that mullet. Admire the mullet. And I'm sorry, ladies, I am already married. Hate to disappoint you. Now here's another image that I scanned in of a nice flower when I was on my trip to Flagstaff the other week. And it turned out just lovely. The purples came in pretty good. The yellows came in fairly good. But you do have some control while you are in DigiView. You can go in here and say, let's bump up the saturation by 5, the contrast by 5, and reduce the brightness by 2. Now we click Display, and it's going to clean up the image a little bit and do just a little bit of basic image processing. You can already see as it's generating the image that it's actually pulling out more of the purple from the purple flower and actually making it look more attractive than the original just generic scan that I did. Really pulls it out a little bit more. Now I could go ahead and maybe tone down the brightness a little bit to take this yellow down a little bit, but then I'm afraid I'd lose some of the detail in the flower. Lovely. Now this same image I also digitized as a 16 color high-res image. Let's go ahead and pull that up and see how that looks. We're going to load the image here. Okay, and you can see on this image, this is a 16 color high-res 736 by 480 image. You don't have as many colors to work with since we're only at 16 color, so we're losing some detail in the yellow here, but the purples actually look pretty cool. So it's just kind of a neat thing you can do to achieve some, you know, very specific effects, and you can tweak around with the settings to try and get a little more realistic coloring out of it too. But high-res scanning modes work really nicely. Now once you have a nice image in and you've got it displaying the way that you want to, you can do some fun things with it, like send it right to DigiPaint So if you've got DigiPaint loaded and running, this will open the image right in on DigiPaint. You can also save the image here. When you hit save, it's going to save it as a standard IFF file, whether it's a ham or a 16 color, whatever you've created it as. Save RGB saves the original 21 bits per pixel image. Now you can't just open this in any old paint program, but it does save the RGB image, so you can pull it in later and do some serious work with it in DigiView if you want to. Of course, you can print things out here, open or close workbench, with the nice multitasking of the Amiga. What we want to do now is we want to do a quick little experiment with high-res dynamic ham scanning so we can really see what it does. So we're going to switch to high-res mode. Now I've discovered that it does not really like overscan. Every time I try to do a dynamic high-res image with overscan turned on, it corrupts the image. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong or what. So we're just going to do it at 640 by 400. We're going to change the screen mode, and we've already got our purple and yellow flower loaded up and ready to go. We're going to go into control, and we're going to tell it dynamic ham mode. Notice I can't click any of these other ones because they're not available in high res. Let's go ahead and do dither pattern of 2. We'll keep the defaults. You know what? I think I'm going to like how that turns out. I'm going to click OK. Now, this takes several times longer to scan in because we're scanning in a fairly high resolution image. So 640 by 400 takes longer to digitize than 320 by 480. So I'm going to scan the 3 colors in, and we will be right back. Now I've scanned in red, green, and blue here. You'll notice it's actually kind of a cool effect that it has right here. It scans in like this in high-res modes, but that's actually a really cool image right there. But when we go to display it, you're going to see some funky magic happen because we're going in dynamic ham. We're going to watch it for a few seconds and watch as the scan line creeps down the screen, and it is actually calculating 16 colors for each scan line as this goes down the screen. And this can take like 3 or 4 minutes for it to go through. So we're just going to wait, and I will be right back and show you the final image. Okay, that took several minutes of scanning in and rendering the lines, but the quality, wow, for a high resolution image that's displaying up to 4,096 colors on screen at one time, that's pretty impressive. I'd say especially the purples. Really beautiful. Now look what happens when I move the mouse. Yay, everything goes wonky. Let the mouse go, and the image comes back. So, actually pretty cool, but the images do need to be static in order to be used. Now you save these just like regular images, so I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to tell it to do this. We're going to call it purple flower _ dynamic.iff. So we'll give that a good save right there. Now it's saved the file to disk. We're going to quit out of here. And we've got our program DynaShow. Let's launch it. DynaShow, which will display dynamic images. Purple flower _ dyn.iff. And you'll see it loads it up very, very quickly. Does not have to regenerate the images. And you could create a little slideshow of dynamic IFF images, high resolution, and really get some incredible effects out of it. Now, because DigiView uses an actual video camera, you can actually take renders of 3D images. And what I mean by 3D is, let's say you have a vase or something like that. You put it on with a nice muslin screen in the background or something like that, and you can actually scan in the vase. Or you can take your camera outside with a big old honking long cable and take a picture of something and scan it in of an outdoor scene, because it's just a video camera. Now, I have found that I've taken some from outside, and I'm not very pleased with the quality because right now we're in the middle of summer in Arizona. Everything is dead. Everything is, burned up. So I don't have a lot of color to take pictures of outside, not a lot of beautiful flowers. But it absolutely does work. Now, I mentioned that DigiView only works on Amiga OS 1.3 or lower. I can't get it to work on any of the higher ones. That does not mean you're totally out of luck. If you buy image effects from our good friends at Aeon, that has a built-in scanner interface for DigiView. So you can actually launch image effects, click on scanners, and it will list DigiView there as an option, and it will let you scan in red, green, blue images, change the resolution. Works fine in Amiga OS 3.12. The only problem I have with it is that it does not build the image as you scan it in. So you tell it to scan and you just wait for like a minute and a half for it with a black screen until boom, there's the image. Okay. Where with DigiView you can see it building the image and it kind of lets you know it's still actually working. But it works fine. There are also a couple of other pieces of hardware that worked with DigiView. One of them was a little motor called the Digidroid that would automatically turn the color wheel for you to red and then green and blue and then scan everything automatically. That's pretty cool. I haven't seen one for sale in forever. I know Amiga Bill owns one. So that's a cool interface. Some people also had for sale a box that extracted the color images from a color camera. So you could hook up a color video camera to it and it would extract the red, green, and blue depending on where you had this little box or this little lever clicked on there. They're kind of cool. Quality, not as good because color cameras of the day were not nearly as high quality as some of the black and white ones, not as many lines. Using it with a modern camera might actually work pretty well though. If I can find a box, I'll test it out and see. What's my final opinion of the DigiView? Well, I had this since 1988, I think, maybe 1989. Absolutely loved it, had a ball with it, scanned in everything under the sun back in the day. I thought the image quality was pretty good back then, and it is. DigiView gives you a very unique kind of image, not perfect photographic quality, but a really, really cool image. And you don't always need photographic quality. Sometimes you want to do something a little more creative, and this gives you another tool in your arsenal for doing some creative things. Just remember, this was state-of-the-art back in the late 80s. There was nothing else out there that could do the same thing for any reasonable price. Thank you to my wonderful patrons from Patreon for supporting the channel. You can see them scrolling across a couple of my scanned in images right now. If you'd like to join in the fun and have your name appear on this illustrious list, just pop on over to patreon.com/10mark for more information. And thank you all very much. I do appreciate it. Thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Huge thanks to my good friends Jack and Taylor for this gift. This is awesome. It's just, I've been having a ball with it, and so I do appreciate it, guys. Please follow me on all the socials. All the links are right in the description. Like the video and subscribe to my channel. That all helps. And please comment below. I love interacting with you guys. Tell me about your DigiView adventures. Tell me about what other solution you used to bring in images back in the late 80s. Tell me about what you used on competing platforms to bring images in. I'd love to start a conversation with you guys. But until next time, this is Digital Digiview Douglas signing out.